Lion King is the latest Disney remake to come out on this factory line of Disney remakes that will never stop. There's still more in development as we speak. Mulan's coming out soon also. There's rumors of Hercules. Little Mermaid is practically confirmed. We're still getting a bunch of these, and The Lion King is just another one. It's another one of these. The plot of this film is exactly the same as the '94 film. Like, exactly. They make some unnecessary changes, but it's exactly the same. It's almost as if you don't even need to really see this movie because you've already seen the much better version, but, you know, people will still go see this anyways because I remember that when I was a kid and now it's live action. So I gotta see it again. The idea of this remake always depressed me. Back in 2016 when this was announced, I even made a video saying this might not be a good idea because the animated film is already so perfect. It's my favorite Disney animated film, but for some reason everyone just bought into the fact that because several months before Jon Favreau had directed The Jungle Book, which everyone really liked, and I really liked that too. It's not an A+ anymore for me, it's kind of dropped down to like an A-, but I still really enjoy that film. Everyone kind of bought into the idea that because he directed that, this was just going to be good, and it's fine that he's remaking it for really no reason. Which is a weird mindset to buy into, but whatever, I can't speak for everyone else, I can only speak for me. So of course, seeing the endless amount of hype for this film going in, looking at all the trailers like, oh my gosh, look at the shots they're recreating, look at this cast, what was it like working with Beyonce, the Beyonce hype train of all things. And I was just sitting there wondering, like, is this, all this hype really going to be worth it? You had all the critics invited to the premiere, the big party with everyone there, and they all seemed to love it when they came out, but then the Rotten Tomatoes score came out, and it seems like they're more mixed than expected, which I did not expect to see coming. I was just kind of expecting glowing reviews all around, but apparently not. With all this reservation beforehand, you're probably all expecting me to say that I saw this movie and I hated it. It's terrible. I did not hate this movie. I don't really like this movie though, but it's not awful. It's not awful, but did you really expect that going in? Because like I said, Jon Favreau made The Jungle Book. He's also had a career of directing other movies like the first Iron Man, Zathura, Chef. We know he's a good director. We know he can make good things. So the fact that this movie isn't terrible isn't surprising to me. It is surprising that this is more mediocre than expected, because I always kind of went in knowing like it's Jon Favreau, so it'll at least be a good movie, right? It'll probably be good. But it's really kind of barely good. One of the best things about this movie is something that everyone has already mentioned. It's no real point in really beating this dead horse, but I'll do it anyways. The CGI is fantastic. The animals look photorealistic. They look like you could reach out and touch them and they'd actually be there, even though we already know they're not. The landscapes themselves look completely real, almost like they brought a camera out there in Africa to actually film it, but they didn't. They fully CG animated it. It's very impressive. Obviously. We've already seen that, though, in The Jungle Book, so I don't know why everyone's in an uproar about this will change cinema forever. Because we've already seen The Jungle Book with basically the same technology, except this is now the most recent time they've done photorealistic animals. It's hard not to feel good when you listen to the music of this film, whenever it's a musical number or the score by Hans Zimmer. It's all really good to listen to, mainly because you've already heard it before in the '94 film, but it's good to hear it again. Pretty much some of the new singers obviously put their own spin on some of the songs, and that helps make it feel a little bit new, but virtually at the end of the day, the far superior version is the animated film. So, once again, just kind of pointless. Pretty much my final pro with this movie is Timon and Pumbaa. They are excellent together. It's kind of like a Will Smith Genie kind of thing. I was going in like, I can't believe they're actually trying to replace, like, Robin Williams as the Genie, but Will Smith didn't try to copy anything he already did. He took the Genie character and made it his own, so it worked out. And it's basically what Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen did with Timon and Pumbaa. I don't think Nathan Lane and Ernie Sabella can ever be replaced as these characters. I'll always think of them. However, Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen are the saving grace of this movie. They make it more entertaining. They put their own spin on the characters. They improv new jokes so that makes them feel fresh and new again, which is fantastic. And they're easily the best part of this movie. Every time they're on screen, they are so much fun. They make one change to one famous scene from the original that I wasn't expecting, but I started laughing immediately. It was one of the biggest belly laughs I had in the entire movie. The last thing I can really say, as far as pros go, is that you can tell that a lot of the cast is trying. They're trying to make these characters work, they're trying to do well, and there are a couple moments where you can actually pick it out. Unfortunately, though, because of the non-emoting of a lot of the characters, a lot of that emotion just feels like it's weirdly put in with it. Like there's at one point where young Simba is crying because father just died, but the face doesn't look like it's upset. But you hear the upset in the voice. So it's a weird image to see. You're also kind of looking for that upsetment in the scene where Mufasa tells Simba, you deliberately disobeyed me. But instead it just looks like a little lion cub, not really affected by anything. There's a lot of moments like that. Like when a Rafiki comes up and Zazu come up to greet Mufasa, he doesn't smile, he just looks at him like a lion would. And that's it. That's a lot of the emotions that you feel in this movie. The only emotion you can really tell from a lot of these characters is whenever they're angry, because at least they snarl. But whenever they're happy, you can't really tell just by looking at them. If they're sad, you can't really tell just by looking at them. One of the key basic things of voice acting is that you are matching up with the visual. You are creating a voice for this animated character that has no voice yet. You have to find that voice for them. But when the voice actors are giving more emotion than the animation is actually showing, it's really bizarre. So at times you can actually tell that they're toning it down to kind of match. Like that's a lot of the movie, is that everyone kind of sounds bored. As much as there are a couple spurts where you can tell they're trying to put something into it, there's just a lot of times where they all sound really boring. Like James Earl Jones as Mufasa, he's iconic and can never be replaced as Mufasa. So him being recast, I had no problem with it. It does lead to a hypocrisy, though, that why is it that James Earl Jones is the only thing you think can't be replaced? What about Jeremy Irons and Nathan Lane, Ernie Sabella, all these people? But whatever, right? Whatever. We got James Earl Jones back. Not as good this time around. In the cartoon, his voice was he was a little younger. His voice had more bass to it. He gave more emotion. The animation fit perfectly. There's one scene with him talking to Simba where he's like, nobody messes with your dad. And it's like this cool scene with them, and they're sharing emotions. You can feel their emotions. He's got such a fantastic voice. In this movie, that personality from his voice is stripped away entirely, and it just feels like James Earl Jones bored of reading these lines again that he's already read, like, 25 years ago. Donald Glover as Simba, that was the one thing that I thought maybe this can be a neat change, because as much as I thought Matthew Broderick did a really good job playing Simba in the animated film, he gave him the right emotion, gave him the right voice, it is one of those things where it's like he's not necessarily iconic, and you could have probably gotten somebody else and he could have delivered the same exact performance. So I was excited to see what Donald Glover could bring to this, and a lot of this he just sounds kind of bored, and he wasn't really doing anything to reinvigorate Simba for me. And honestly, I just kind of wanted to hear Matthew Broderick again. Like, Donald Glover really wasn't doing it for me this time around. He can sing well, sure, but I mean, as far as the acting goes, he didn't really do that good of a job, which was really surprising, because I think he's great. He can be a really great actor. But in this film, it literally feels like, I saw this on Letterboxd, this review, and if I can find it again, here's the screenshot, basically saying like he woke up in the middle of the night to do these lines, and it sounds like he's trying to get through them as quickly as possible so he can go back to bed. That's very accurate. Like, that's exactly what his performance was. Same goes to Beyonce as Nala, and they were really trying to hype her up, like Beyonce's in the movie, she's got a brand new song that's going to be randomly played at some point, which, yeah, Spirit is just kind of randomly inserted, so it's really awkward, but whatever, they got it in the movie, good for Beyonce. But honestly, I'm surprised they're not hyping up Timon and Pumbaa more, because they are the soul of the film, they are the heart. They save the movie from complete boredom for a lot of it. Because except for the fact that Beyonce and Donald Glover sing together, there's really not that much to get excited for about her. Like, she doesn't do as good a job as the Nala from the cartoon, but on her own, she's just basically doing the same as Donald Glover, just reading some lines, and then that's it. And I thought for sure they were, because Beyonce was in it, they're gonna try to, like, pump up her role, like, give her more to do. The only thing they really changed to Nala's character is that they give her one extra scene showing her leaving Pride Land. In the animation, they intentionally didn't show that, so when it's revealed it's Nala that's attacking Simba, that's the big surprise, is that's Nala, she's okay, and Simba, you're alive, that's the big surprise. But in this one, it's not a bad idea to focus on Nala escaping or showing how they're suffering, but it is pretty much unnecessary, because it's literally just there to be an extra scene that if you take it out, doesn't really need to be there. The hyenas honestly disappointed me in this film. The cartoon hyenas are hysterical. The three of them, they focus on their chemistry. They're perfect together. Whoopi Goldberg and Cheech Marin. And Jim Cummings, who plays Ed. They're funny together. They're funny. You get to know their personalities, and then all of a sudden you realize there's a whole bunch of them. That there's an army. It's not just these three. Helps you get more into the hyena situation. In this film, when you see them for the first time, they're already surrounded by a bunch of other hyenas. Ed and Banzai aren't even the names anymore. It's like Kamari and Azizi, I think. Shenzi is more of a serious leader now instead of the Whoopi Goldberg funny. And Keegan-Michael Key and Eric Andre, honestly, I'm surprised they got these two to play these characters, because essentially those two hyena characters are now throwaway. Like, they don't even really need to be in the movie anymore, because their personalities have been all stripped to this very serious, okay, we're gonna give you one little joke here, but we're getting back on track. It's nowhere near the same amount of humor and personality that the animated film brought, which was really disappointing. Rafiki, they took away something from him that I couldn't believe. I couldn't believe they did it. He's toned down, so at times he's still yelling at the top of his lungs, but it's not as funny, and it's not really as insane. You know, he's toned down a lot to match with the rest of this live-action, non-emoting stuff. There's one part, though, that I was actually kind of mad that they took away from him, because if you're essentially trying to do something shot for shot and not trying to do anything new with it, then why would you take out the line where he whacks Simba in the head and Simba's like, what was that for? And he's like, doesn't matter, it's in the past. Because when I heard that film when I was a little younger, it wasn't the first time I'd seen The Lion King. It was one of the times where I was rewatching it, and they said the line, and it really, like, hit me, like, oh, wow, that's actually a really great lesson that I'm glad I'm picking up on right now. Like, that's really well done. And in this film, that important lesson that the past is in the past, but it can still hurt, but you can still learn from it, it's gone. Not there. It's one of the most iconic moments, but for some reason, that's one of the things they tried to change in a movie that's filled with the same thing you've already seen before, but some unnecessary changes to minor things. This is bizarre. Like, I don't even know why Zazu isn't more bitey in this film. Like, Rowan Atkinson gave him more of like a, I'm superior to you kind of bite, but as soon as someone threatened him, that's when he'd be like, oh, and he'd hide behind someone bigger than him. That's Zazu's character, is that he'll always act like a tough guy until you actually threaten him. But I love Zazu for that. Rowan Atkinson did a good job as him in the cartoon. In this film, you got John Oliver, so I was like, okay, that's good. He's British, and he's a news guy. He talks about the news on a show. He's good. He'll do a good job. And as soon as the bird comes up, and you hear John Oliver's voice come out of it, and the mouth is moving like a bird, I was like, oh no. Oh no. And John Oliver did fine, like he does a fine job as Zazu, but Zazu's kind of missing that bite, so now he's just kind of a wuss all the time. He's just kind of nerdy. Pretty much, that's the best way to describe his demeanor in the film. And it was kind of off-putting, although John Oliver, once again, he did fine, and I wasn't bothered by it, but it was just a weird change. Like, why are you changing it like this? They open the film with Circle of Life, obviously, and they make a change immediately in the beginning of the film. Instead of, you hear the Nazavenya, and the sun just comes up on this dark landscape, and it's just flooding it with light all of a sudden, and it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, this bright red thing coming up. In this film, I thought it was so bizarre how they just open up on a gray landscape. It's early in the morning, and everything's just gray. Everything's muted. And it holds there for like a solid 10 seconds. And I was like, what is going on? Where's the singing? Where's the big sun? What's going on? All of a sudden, you hear the singing start when this little sun comes up, so you just get this powerful voice that's being matched up with this tiny little sun rising up incredibly too fast and not giving the landscape any light. It's nothing. I was astonished that that's a change that they made. I couldn't believe it. Literally every time they played a song in this movie, and it was a musical, there was always something in there, minor or big, that was throwing me off. And I just can't wait to be king. There's a couple times where J.D. McCrary is singing, and he's doing a good job, but it sometimes always feels like, besides singing and while he's talking, delivering dialogue, his audio's muted. Or not muted, just brought down, so it's really bizarre how he sounds so low, and it doesn't feel like he's fitting in with the world. And also when he's singing, there's a couple notes he hits that doesn't really match up with the music playing. And the big moment at the end where they're like, I just can't wait to be king, and they hold it, and they hold the shot on these two lions with their mouths barely open. It's funny. It's funny to see. It's so awkward. And this isn't just me complaining that, oh, it doesn't look like the musical sequences in the cartoon, because I've already accepted at this point that they're not gonna try to do that. I think that would make the movie more visually impressive, is if they actually tried to recreate those numbers that would seem impossible in live action. But it seems like them cheaping out on that and just going, well, just have them trot along in Hakuna Matata. They're not dropping down into a pond and then getting splashed up. Like, no, they're just running along. Like, that seems really cheap and, like, kind of lazy. And I don't know why people are clamoring at this as, like, the most visually impressive thing ever when they can't even do those visuals that are so fantastic in the animation. But whatever. I enjoyed Hakuna Matata for Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen. They have a really good chemistry. But there's a couple times near the end of the song when you can tell Seth Rogen is going flat. And it's not, and before that they were making his voice work. Like, clearly he's not a trained singer, but they were making it work before that, and I was like, alright, that's good. But then all of a sudden you just hear, it's our problem free, like, really flat. And it's like, what is going on? It literally took me out of it for a second. What should have been like this perfectly harmonized moment is now just it's throwing me off because Seth Rogen's not harmonizing. Can You Feel the Love Tonight? Good singing. Takes place in the day. So I don't know why it was so hard for them to animate it at nighttime, because they have nighttime scenes in this film, but for the one important scene of Can You Feel the Love Tonight, it's in the day. And the scene is supposed to transition to the night anyway, so why was it in the day for the whole time? Like, in the animation, they transition, like, it's a little, like, the sun's going down in the beginning of the song, but it transitions to it just being completely nighttime. They don't even do that. It's just, the sun's out, that's it. Like, what's going on? The worst song, though, easily. I may have mentioned that I had a couple problems with the other songs, but overall, they're fine to listen to again. Be Prepared, no. No. They got rid of the green smoke and the explosions of the rocks rising up for just Scar not even singing, but like talking, and then getting into a chant for Be Prepared. That's only like a minute and a half long. It's so weird. I think it's very obvious that Chiwetel can't sing, or they made him, they told him to sing it in a way that made him sound like he couldn't sing. It's so weird what they do with Be Prepared. That he's just on a ledge, and then he jumps down, goes to another ledge, and keeps sing-talking, jumps up again, and then jumps up again and looks down at the hyenas like, alright, we got our Be Prepared moment in. It's like, this is not as powerful as what it once was. And you could have, but you didn't. And it leads me to another big problem. Scar, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, they tried to make him Shere Khan from the Jungle Book. I think that's very noticeable. They try to make him look more gross, kind of like Shere Khan in the Jungle Book, even though in the animation he's not that, like, gross. He is kind of thin and maybe sickly if you brought him into live action, but he's not, like, dusty or, like, just gray. Like, there's a lot of color to his darkness, obviously. So that's obviously throwing me off, but also he's missing that Jeremy Irons sassiness that makes Scar so wonderful. Scar is one of those characters that wants to be in charge, and he'll talk tough, but as soon as you kind of threaten him, because he's at the lower end of the gene pool as far as strength, he'll kind of cower and get kind of scared. So he'll try to weasel his way out of it. We've seen that before. That's the kind of character Scar is. He needs that sassiness that Jeremy Irons has, and it doesn't make sense why they think James Earl Jones is irreplaceable, but not Jeremy Irons. So Chiwetel Ejiofor just kind of plays it like if he was cast as Shere Khan from the Jungle Book. And that works for Shere Khan because that's the character. But in this film, Scar is missing on those key moments that Jeremy Irons made so wonderful with his dialogue. Now everything's just delivered very flat. It's kind of boring whenever we cut back to him because I'm not invested with him as a villain and I don't care enough. He's not even really all that scary, even though he's now a live-action murderous lion. Which is weird, that the fact that the animation is scarier than the live-action lion. That moment where he whispers, "Long live the king," throws Mufasa off the cliff, is now replaced with Chiwetel Ejiofor doing, "Long live the king," and he, like, punches Mufasa or scratches Mufasa in the face, and that's what happens to Mufasa when he falls down. And it was so bizarre. It's like you had one job for this scene. Just have him lean in and whisper that and let go. That's very powerful. That's a powerful thing in the animation. It's beautifully done. In this film, they went extra. And I think that's how you can summarize the whole movie, is that any change they made, it just felt extra and unnecessary, and it doesn't really jive with everything else going on. And then everything else is just the same thing, and that's it. They don't do anything much new, and anything they try to do new, even though it's like a minor thing, it doesn't feel necessary. And it just further supports my theory that the first animated film is fantastic, and it's wonderful, and should never have been touched. But they touched it. Touch everything. Touched Aladdin, they touched up Dumbo this year, 3. And we're not even done yet. There's a Lady and the Tramp movie coming out on Disney Plus later this year. So we're going to get more. And then Mulan is next year. They're eventually going to announce The Little Mermaid officially, and then Tarzan maybe, another Tarzan movie after Legend of Tarzan, sure. Hercules, I hear that's in development. Like, we're just going to keep getting more remakes all the time. Now they just feel kind of stale. They started off kind of neat, like, okay, Maleficent, like, you're switching it up, like, alright, I can buy into that. The Jungle Book, alright, that's much better than the animated film. Like, they actually did a good job improving that. Beauty and the Beast, you know what, they did make some changes that kind of changed up certain ways you looked at the characters, like, that's fine enough with me. This film, they didn't do anything with it to actually support anything. The only thing that I'd say was a good change was Timon and Pumbaa's jokes. And that's really only because of Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen's great acting, comedic acting. And everything else is just, alright, now we're going to read our lines exactly the same as the animated film, except more boring. The songs, alright, here's the song sequence. We got to make it boring. It's just animals running around and not doing anything you've seen in the cartoon. It's pretty much, this movie is just the lamer version of a movie you could just watch at home. But people will go out in droves to see this. I can't say I really hate this movie, though, because it's never boring. It relatively goes by pretty quickly. It sticks to the story that I already like. So, the CGI looks fantastic, and if I saw this movie in IMAX 3D, I probably would have been more immersed in this film, because I've already heard that from one of my good friends who did see it in IMAX 3D. They said it was one of the most immersive things they've ever seen, which is fantastic. I'm sure if you see it in IMAX 3D, you'll love it. I like that the actors were trying their best. But I can't really say that this is a good movie because there's a lot of things they do that hold it back. And as much as I don't want to be that guy who compares the remake to the original, since this movie tries to stick to the original so much, I figure comparing it to the original only makes sense to show why that film works in a very tight, fast-paced movie instead of this, which they padded out. And now it's just kind of a hollow experience. What is an emotional experience with the cartoon is now a hollow one once you see it in live action. Like, once you see these animals not emoting, like, I can't connect with that. To just kind of stress how padded out this thing is, there's a moment where Simba's hair has to go to Rafiki, and that's how Rafiki learns, oh, he's still alive. The way they drag that scene out, of just the hair floating around and then flying through the air, getting rolled up by a dung beetle so there's literal shit in your face at one point. Like, another thing that just adds to the, I don't know why they changed that, but they did, and it's unnecessary. I gotta give The Lion King a C+. I can't hate this movie, and like I expected, it's not awful because Jon Favreau does a good job. He's a good director. He did the best he can with this movie. Honestly, I'm not even sure if he even really wanted to do this, but he put his heart into this no matter what. Whatever. It's still a very emotionally hollow experience, and I think I'd just prefer to watch the cartoon. In fact, I will never probably want to see this movie ever again. To be honest, like, there's no real drive for me to see it again. Like, well, if I see it in IMAX 3D, maybe I'll actually like it this time. Like, there's none of that going on. I don't really want to see this film again. Just the idea of Disney remakes in general, it just makes the cynical part of my brain tired just thinking about that. So, it's exactly what you'd expect from a remake of a perfect film that they realize is perfect, so they barely did anything new with it. I guess that's where we're at, but that's where we're at right now. Woo woo! But if you've seen The Lion King, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.